In this tutorial, you're going to learn how to create this pricing section and also how to create the spheres that have a blur effect and that are positioned behind the wrapper of the pricing tier. All right, so we're going to start by adding a main that will be the main wrapper. And inside, we're going to have a UL with a class of pricing list. And this will hold our 3 LIs, which is going to be 1 LI for each of the pricing tiers. And inside of the LIs, we're going to have an H2 for the name of the pricing item. We're going to have a paragraph underneath. It's going to be the price itself. So let's add a class on it because we're going to have another paragraph later, so we can differentiate between the two. And this paragraph is also going to have a span that's going to contain the $sign. And next to it, it's going to have the price itself. For the free tier, the price is going to be 0. And underneath, we're going to have a small tag, which is going to say how often they have to pay. So, of course, if it's free, it's going to be free for your whole team. Next up, we're going to have the other paragraph with a class of description that will hold the description of the tier. And last but not least, we're going to have a button with a class of BTN, so we're going to style it, and a class of BG Pink because the buttons have different colors. So we're going to use the different classes to apply different background colors. And this is going to say get started. All right, so now that we have the first one, we can copy and paste it 2 more times. And then I'll go ahead and change the text. All right, perfect. We have a different description, a different price, and different name for the pricing item. And with that, for now, the HTML is complete. At the end, we're going to come back here and add the 3 spheres that are behind the main element. But we'll do that later. So in our CSS, we're going to add box sizing border box on all elements. And on the body, we'll have a gray color. We'll have a font family of pop hints. And as usually on these projects, we want to center everything with display flex, align item center, justify content center. And we need min height 100 viewport heights so that it has room to be centered vertically, and margin 0 to remove the scroll on the body. Awesome. Next, for the main, we're going to have a white background, but we want it to be with opacity. So we can change this to be RGB, add an A, so it's RGBA, and at the end, we can say 0.5. So basically, we have a background color, which is white with 0.5 opacity. We'll have a border radius of 10 pixels and a border 10 pixels solid white that's going around it. So you may not be able to see exactly what's happening now, but when we're going to add the spheres behind it, you'll be able to roughly see the blur of the spheres because of this opacity. Okay, next for the pricing list, which is our UL, we want to remove the list style type. We want to change the padding to be 2 rem, remove the margin, and display flex. And between the items inside it, we want 2 rem gap. And the thing that we can do now is that, as you can see on mobile, they're kind of not looking very good, right? So what we can say, it's flex wrap to be wrap. So now they're going to be wrapped whenever they don't have enough room. And we can add justify content center so that the third element here goes to the center whenever it has room. Awesome. Next, we're going to target the H2 inside of the pricing list, and we want to remove the margin top and maybe decrease the font weight to 500. Awesome. Next, for the price, which if you remember, it's a paragraph that also has this span, we want to do a couple of things. First, we want to increase the font size to 3 rem, so we make it a very big number. We also want to make it bold, so font weight bold. We want to decrease the line height to be only 1, and the margin as well, so 0.25 top and bottom, and 0 left and right, just like that. And as you can see, the span now also has the same font size as the paragraph because it's inside it. But what we can do is to say the span inside it, we want it to be half of the font size, so 1.5 rem, just like that. So now we have this effect where the $sign is small and sort of in the bottom left corner here. But we still have a big gap here, so we could do a little trick by saying margin right on the span to be minus 10 pixels. So that way it will kind of pull the number towards it. Perfect. Next, for the description, as you can see now, they're kind of going full width, basically the amount they need, right? But let's limit it. Let's say max width 220 pixels. I found this number to be looking very similar to the design that we have. We want margin to rem top and bottom 0 left and right. And let's also change the line height to be 1.4 so that we have a bit of a gap between the lines here. Awesome. And now let's style the buttons. So we have that BTN class, which we applied on all of the buttons. And let's start by saying, I want it to be an orange color. So all the buttons will be orange by default. We don't want any border. And we want border radius to be 5 pixels, like that. Let's add a padding of 1 rem so we can see it better. And cursor pointer, so that whenever we hover, we see that, okay, they're clickable. Next, let's increase the font weight to bold. And now we can move on to adding those BG colors that we have. So first one was BG pink, and then we had BG teal and also BG yellow. And I found out what the correct colors were. And now let's add a hover effect that we can see what happens when we hover over. And for this, I went and did something different. I added a box shadow of 0004 pixels. So the spread is 4 pixels and black. So whenever we hover, we have this sort of an outline. And right now it kind of pops in, so it doesn't look the best. But what we can do on the button, we can say transition box shadow 0.2 seconds ease. And that way, the box shadow will nicely grow like this. And whenever we click on it, we're going to have button active, which we're going to remove the 4 pixels of spread. So now we hover over, we see the box shadow, and when we click, the box shadow goes back to 0, just like that. I found that it's an interesting style, but you can go ahead and do as you wish. All right, so that's it for the styling. It's also sort of responsive, although maybe let's center the text whenever we reach a certain point. So we can go here and say media screen, and if the width is less than 830 pixels, then we want the main to have text align center. So that way, when we reach the point that the first jump happens, the text is centered. And then on mobile as well, we have the text centered, which looks a little better. And what we can do also on mobile is to have a bit of a bigger gap between the elements. So we can say pricing list, which is our UL that contains the items. So this item, and this item. We can say that gap is 4 rem. So now we kind of see that, okay, there are different elements here. All right. And the last piece of the puzzle is to create the 3 spheres that are going to be behind the main element. What we're going to do in the main tag here, we're going to create 3 divs with the class of sphere and the background color that we used for the buttons. So pink, teal, and yellow. Because we're already using these classes, so we can reuse them. And then in the CSS, we can go here and say the sphere is going to be width 300 pixels, height 300 pixels. So you can see they appeared inside the main, exactly where we put them. So we can convert them to a circle with border radius 50%, like that. And now we want to use positioning to play around with the position of them relative to the main element. So we can say position absolute. They'll now get out of the flow of the document. And we can go ahead and style each sphere individually. So the first one, we're going to use nth child of 1 because it's here inside the main, the first child. This selector is going to target it. So for this, we want bottom 0, left 0, which will go there. But we're going to add on the main tag position relative. So now it's going to be relative to the main tag. And as you can see, it's on the bottom left part of the main tag. But we want to have it so that the middle of the circle is in this bottom right corner. So what we can do is say translate minus 50% on the x-axis and 50% down. And this percentage is based on the size of the sphere. So that means that from this part where it went 50% on the left, as you saw, and then 50% down. And now it's right there. For the next sphere, and child 2, we're going to have top 0, left 0, which basically it's where it is now. But we also want to translate it. And for this, we'll say 25% and minus 25%. So it's going to be somewhere around there. And the last one, let's copy paste this. You want top 0, right 0 this time. Oops, not that one, this one. Right 0. And we want to change 2 to be 3. So that way now this one goes right there. But as you can see, they're not looking the way we want it, right? We want them to be behind the main element, and we also want them to have a blur effect. So for that, we're going to apply 2 new properties. First, we're going to say filter blur 80 pixels, but now they have a very big blur effect on them. And in order to have them behind the main element, we're going to say z-index -1. And with that, as you can see, we have the spheres behind the main element. And because we have the opacity on the background color here, you can sort of see the circles. If we decrease the blur to something like 10 pixels, you can clearly see the spheres here underneath the background color. Awesome. And let's maybe move the second one to be -50 here. So move it up a little bit. Look at that. Beautiful. Now we do have a problem though. If we scroll in on the mobile view, because of these circles, we're going to have a scroll issue, right? Because they'll still take up some space in the viewport and we have to scroll to see them. But how do we solve this? For this, we're going to go to the body tag and we're going to say overflow hidden, which is not necessarily the best approach, because now if we go to mobile, if we have a lot of text like this, we won't be able to scroll because overflow is hidden. So how do we solve that? Basically what we want to get rid of is the scroll on the horizontal line. So what we can say is that overflow X let's be hidden like this, so we don't have the scroll there compared to previously where we had the scroll like this. So we say overflow hidden on the x-axis, and in case you are bigger on the y-axis, well, you're free to be scrollable, because otherwise we're kind of blocking all the elements of the page. And with that, you completed the tutorial. Well done.